Review for Blue Velvet, directed by David Lynch, written by David Lynch. Synopsis: the discovery of a severed human ear found in a field leads to a young man on an investigation related to a beautiful, mysterious nightclub singer and a group of psychopathic criminals who have kidnapped her child and her husband too. So, uh, wow, this movie's pretty crazy. At least parts of it. I did enjoy it. It's kind of slow. I think it's the pacing is a bit slow, I would say, which is a complaint, I guess, but I don't know, it's an interesting movie. Definitely, this is David Lynch's movie, all, fully through and through. There's a lot of scenes with Kyle MacLachlan. He's the star in it, definitely. I'd say when Dennis Hopper ever shows up, the movie definitely picks up speed and interest, even though he is a very sick, twisted character. He's not a good guy. He's very terrible. But I think Dennis Hopper is one of those actors that always gives, 110%. At least for me, I've never seen him really give a bad performance. I mean, even in a movie that I'm not crazy about, like Texas Chainsaw 2, he's the best thing in it for me. And whenever he's on the screen, I think the movie really, gets an injection of energy. And the same is true in this movie. Because like the first third is just kind of slow, and Kyle MacLachlan is kind of investigating. He finds this ear in this field. His father is in the hospital. He visits his father in the hospital. Then he leaves. He goes through this field back to his house. There's an ear in the field. Then he goes to a cop, a detective, and he knows the family. He kind of has a love interest in the daughter. He goes to him. He gives him the ear. He starts to investigate. Um, but really, he does almost all the investigation. And this all leads him to Isabella Rossellini, and she lives in this apartment, and he wants to get into the apartment and kind of spy on her to see what's happening. The ear was cut off by a scissor, and this kind of sets up the rest of the story. So I did enjoy the movie. It's very weird movie. Yeah, especially anything with Dennis Hopper. It's just like very strange, but he is very good in it. I mean, total psycho, and he has a group of friends who are all psychos. They're all like druggies. But yeah, I did like it. I would recommend it. I mean, it's like a classic. I've watched a little bit of it before, the first, 20 minutes, but I kind of lost interest. So just kind of stick with it, because by the time you get into like the middle part, I think it gets much better. Like for me at least, like the second half is much more interesting than the first half. So, um, yeah, I'm gonna get into spoilers now. So he's investigating this with Laura Dern, who's the daughter of the detective, and he goes and sneaks into her apartment. He poses as a has to spray for bugs because his dad owns a hardware store, and they also have a bug spray machine. that they probably do on the side, like a side gig. So he takes that because he's running the store because his dad got injured. I don't really understand what happened to his dad because his dad's like watering the lawn, then he like grabs his neck and then he just like collapses. And I was thinking he was having like a heart attack, but then when he's in the hospital, he just kind of has like it's like he injured his neck. But it's like, how'd you injure your neck? You were just like watering the lawn. I don't know. And then after he gets injured, then it cuts to a bunch of ants and bugs in the lawn, and they're like eating each other. Very interesting visual style in this movie because it's like it seems like it takes place like in the early 50s maybe, but then Kyle McLaughlin has like a Cadillac from like the 70s, and there's some other cars from like the 70s, so it's kind of interesting. It's like you don't really know exactly when it takes place, but it kind of feels like it's kind of not spoofing, but kind of poking fun at like the idea of like the 50s, like the perfect house, the perfect family, the white picket fence, uh, people's imagination about that time and how it was much better and everything was perfect. But and in the beginning, there's some beautiful shots of just like the house and the white picket fence, and then there's a firefighter and he's driving by and he's like waving to all the people, like I'm a good civil servant. This is a dream-esque setting, a suburbia, everything's perfect. And David Lynch is kind of like then showing the seedy underbelly of that people don't like to talk about, which I found interesting. So, but with David Lynch, I honestly haven't watched that much of his stuff. I mean, I like The Elephant Man, but that's a pretty straightforward movie. Um, I mean, the topic, is different. It's based on a true story. It's very sad, but it's just kind of a straightforward, sad drama that's very good. And then this, which I liked, this is totally different. I like his Dune, and there's different cuts of that movie, and that movie's a whole other thing about it's like a mess. And but I do like his Dune. I've read the Dune book. Well, I've read the first two or three, um, which I like. Very good world building. But I like his Dune. I like the visuals in that movie. I've seen the new Dune Part One. I haven't seen Part Two. A negative I have of those movies is like there's not much color. Like it's like the colors kind of sucked out of it. It kind of is. I don't know. But I do think that I need to see Part Two, but at least Part One I think tells the story a little. It's a little more accessible because David Lynch's Dune is the first book, um, but that's the whole movie. So there's no two parts. So and it's a huge book, so it's better to break it up. But anyways, I like his Dune. It's a very flawed movie, but I enjoy it. I'd say I like this. I've never really watched Twin Peaks. Maybe I should, but so I haven't seen a lot of David Lynch. I watched like half of Eraserhead, and that movie is so weird. I don't know. Maybe I'll finish it at some point, but I just turned it off because it's just so weird. But so David Lynch is kind of hit or miss with me, but this is interesting. It's very well shot. It's a beautiful looking movie. It's very strange. I mean, like Dennis Hopper's character has kidnapped Isabella Rossellini's husband and her kid to basically like make her a sex slave for him, and also I think make her sing Blue Velvet at like this kind of seedy bar, and he goes in there and watches her, and then he like calls her on the phone, and this is when Kyle MacLachlan is hiding in the house in the apartment, because he goes and sprays it for bugs. He steals a key. Then later he sneaks back up. Him and Laura Dern are kind of all in on this, but he does all the seedy stuff. She's just kind of talking with him about it, and she points him in the direction of Isabella Rossellini. And right, because she her room is above uh her dad's like den where he does work. She heard that there was a connection from the ear that they think is connected to Isabella Rossellini. She tells Kyle MacLachlan about that. He then with her are driving around. He then goes into the apartment and hides in the closet. And then Isabella Rossellini comes back, and this is when it gets pretty crazy because then Dennis Hopper shows up, and, and I mean he's a messed up character, but it's just the way that Dennis Hopper says these lines. Like it's just like he says to her, "Shut up," or she calls him Frank, and then he says, "Shut up, it's Daddy, you shithead. Where's my bourbon?" And then she goes and gets some bourbon, and then he pulls out this mask, this breathing mask with this drug, and he's like sucking it in, and then he's like, you know, getting ready to have sex, and then he starts saying to her, "Mommy, baby wants to fuck," like just bizarre, and he's all high off this drug, and then whenever she looks at him, like he hits her, and he's like, "Don't look at me." So just bizarre performance, twisted, messed up character, and then after that he leaves. She ends up discovering that Kyle MacLachlan uh is in the closet watching all this, and then the rest of the movie unfolds with Kyle MacLachlan. Uh, Dennis Hopper finds out about him. He takes him and Isabella Rossellini to the place where they're holding her husband and her child. At that place is Dean Stockwell, who's wearing like a bunch of makeup, and then starts like singing randomly with like a light bulb, and starts singing, and then Dennis Hopper's like all into it, but then he stops, and I think he sells. Does he sell him some drugs, or does maybe Stockton sells Dennis Hopper some drugs, and then Dennis Hopper takes Isabel Rossellini and Kyle MacLachlan kind of on a joyride, um, and then they go out to the middle of nowhere. Dennis Hopper beats up Kyle MacLachlan, and again he's using this mask with this drug that he's sniffing, and yeah, it's absolutely just a bizarre movie. Um, but I did like it. I mean, all the acting's good. I like Kyle MacLachlan. He's a good actor. He was good in Dune. Dean Stockwell, great actor. R.I.P. Same with Dennis Hopper. R.I.P. Even though I don't endorse what his character does, he's a very sick, twisted psychopath, just like they say. Even the guy, yeah, Brad Dourif's in it. He's like one of his henchmen. He's barely in it, but he's basically one of his like druggy henchmen who go with him and beat up Kyle MacLachlan. So on the trivia, several actors were considered for the role of Frank, found the character too repulsive and intense. Dennis Hopper, by contrast, is reported to have exclaimed, "I've got to play Frank because I am Frank," which is like kind of sick and disturbing. Like, okay, Dennis Hopper, so you're admitting that you're like a psychopath or something and a very violent, evil man. Isabel Rossellini claims that during the initial filming of the ritualistic, well, I don't really want to say that word, scene with Dennis Hopper, David Lynch could not stop laughing off screen at the weirdness of it all. Though he was baffled as to why he was laughing at the time, Rossellini says that to this day she herself laughs uncontrollably every time she watches that particular scene. Wow. Isabella Rossellini's role was written by David Lynch and Debbie Harry. Harry, sick of receiving offers to play the weirdo after she played such a character in Videodrome, turned it down. Oh, wow. She is good in Videodrome. I could totally see her in that role. That's interesting. So she helped write the role, but then she turned it down. Roy Orbison initially rejected David Lynch's request to use the song in Dreams in the brothel scene. Lynch found a way to legally use the song anyways, and Orbison did not discover the song was in the movie until Orbison just happened to see the movie in a California theater. Orbison eventually filmed a video for the song that was produced by Lynch with footage from the movie. David Lynch had never seen any of Laura Dern's previous films. Isabella Rossellini had seen Mask and was convinced, I've never seen that, and was convinced by her performance that she wondered why Lynch had cast a blind girl in a role that hadn't been written as such. Okay. What? It cast a blind girl. Was she blind in Mask? Is that what that's she's saying? Oh, okay. Yeah. Yeah, Laura Dern's very good in this. She's kind of playing like an innocent high school girl. She's like about to graduate. Kyle MacLachlan's a few years older than her. They kind of fall in love over time. Kyle MacLachlan also kind of has like a romance with Isabella Rossellini, and that makes Laura Dern angry later on in the movie. But very good acting from everyone. But yeah, Laura Dern kind of plays this like innocent kind of character, but it's very good. The character of Frank, that's Dennis Hopper, was to breathe helium at various intervals in Lynch's original script, but Dennis Hopper suggested this be changed to amyl nitrate or nitrate, which he knew was used to enhance sexual experiences. Hopper only realized years later how bizarre and therefore fitting the concept of a helium breathing maniac talking with a high voice would have been. Lynch, however, felt that using helium might elicit laughter in the audience, which would have been undesirable. Yeah, that's true. The role of Jeffrey was originally offered to Val Kilmer, who turned it down, describing the script he read as pornography, although he says he would have done the version that finally made it to the screen. Coincidentally, Val Kilmer was in the running to play Paul Atreides in David Lynch's previous film, Dune, and that role went to Kyle MacLachlan. Hmm. Well, I think Kyle MacLachlan's perfect for both roles, so In Jonathan Ross's Presents for 1 Week Only, David Lynch. Lynch claims that the robin in the final scene was a real bird. Oh, wow, really? When he told that it looks like an artificially bird, he says, yeah. He says, well, it's playing a role, and smiles broadly. It was later alleged that although the robin was a mechanism, it was made from an actual dead robin that the props department had found on the street. So is it a real bird or not? Okay. Yeah, at the end, there's this bird in the window and it's like eating a bug. There's definitely like a sub, uh, not plot, but there's definitely something to do with like bugs kind of underneath the surface. Maybe it's like that's what it is. It's like the seedy underbelly is like the bugs that are underneath the surface that you don't really see. And in suburbia, it's like this perfect, beautiful place, but there's a seedy underbelly with bugs and ants, and they're eating each other. And Molly Ringwald was originally offered the role of Sandy, but her mother objected to her starring in it due to the graphic content of the film. Laura Dern was cast instead. I think Laura Dern is better. I'm a bigger fan of Laura Dern than Molly Ringwald, but a scene in which Dennis Hopper hits as Isabella Rossellini was edited so hard that his hand connects with her face off screen to satisfy MPAA concerns about violence towards women. Director David Lynch opined that the change only made the scene more disturbing. The film was the inspiration for Twin Peaks. During a 2018 interview with Alec Baldwin, WNC radio program, Here's the Thing, Kyle MacLachlan said that Blue Velvet had a pre-release test screening. That's a common practice for studio films in California, suburban San Fernando Valley. The test audiences filled out comment cards after the screening, and MacLachlan said they were some of the worst response cards the studio had ever seen for any movie. MacLachlan remembered that everyone involved with the making of the film were despairing until the New York film critic Pauline Kael reviewed the film and explained it to people in a way, or pointed them in the right direction, or helped them to get a sense of what the world that they were seeing was about, and that started to slow the movement of acceptance of the movie. Dennis Hopper says fuck in nearly every scene. He is also the only one to use the word in this film, except for Dean Stockwell, who says it once, on command by Dennis Hopper's character. Despite his disappointment with the situation, Lynch was granted rights for the song later in Lost Highway. David Lynch originally wanted the song To the Siren by this Mortal Coil playing with when Jeffrey and Sandy are dancing in the bar because it was one of his all-time favorite songs. Despite many efforts to obtain the rights, Lynch was not able to use the song. The F word is used 56 times, all by once by Frank Booth. So yeah, it's a crazy movie. Um, check it out, especially if you're a David Lynch fan. I mean, you probably have already then. Roger Ebert was not a fan. He gave it 1 out of 4 stars. The movie has two levels of reality. On one level, where in Lumberton, a simple-minded small town where people talk in television cliches and seems to be a clone of the 1950s sitcom characters. On another level, we're told a story of sexual bondage, of how Rossellini's husband and son have been kidnapped by Dennis Hopper, who makes her his sexual slave. The twist is that the kidnapping taps into the woman's deepest feelings. She finds that she is a masochist who responds with great sexual passion to this situation. And yeah, that's another thing. She kind of like enjoys it, kind of, it seems like. So yeah, very twisted. And that's what Ebert's saying. Everyday town life is depicted with a deadpan irony. Characters use lines with corny double meanings and solemnly recite platitudes. Meanwhile, the darker story of sexual bondage is told absolutely on the level in cold blooded realism. So, yeah, he wasn't really a fan. The sexual material in Blue Velvet is so disturbing, and the performance by Rossellini is so convincing and courageous that it demands a movie that deserves it. American movies have been using satire for years to take the edge off sex and violence. Occasionally, perhaps sex and violence should be treated with the seriousness they deserve. Given the power of the darker scenes in this movie, we're all the more frustrated that the director is unwilling to follow through to the consequences of his insights. Velvet is like the guy who drives you nuts by hinting at a horrifying news and then saying, "Never mind, there's another thing." Rossellini is asked to do things in this film that require real nerve. In one scene, she publicly embarrassed by being dumped naked on a lawn of the police detective. In others, she is asked to portray emotions that I imagine most actresses would rather not touch. She is degraded, slapped around, humiliated, and undressed in front of the camera. And when you ask an actress to endure those experiences, you should keep your side of the bargain by putting her in an important film. That's what Bernardo Bertolucci delivered when he put Marlon Brando in The Last Tango in Paris. Although that movie's messed up, man. There's a really messed up story between that movie and put Marlon Brando and Maria Schneider through the ordeal of The Last Tango in Paris. I've never seen it, but if you look into it, there's a very twisted, disturbing thing that Marlon Brando did and the director in that movie to I think to Maria Schreider or Schneider. I haven't seen it though. But in Blue Velvet, Rossellini goes through the whole distance, but Lynch distances himself from her ordeal with his clever asides and witty little in jokes. In a way, his behavior is more sadistic than the Hopper character. What's worse, slapping around someone around or standing back and finding the whole thing funny? Interesting. So he's saying it. There's some powerful scenes, but he thinks the movie doesn't add up to much. I guess I could see his point of view, um, but yeah, Blue Velvet. I mean, I guess I'd say I enjoyed the movie, but it is a dark, twisted movie. Especially everything to do with Dennis Hopper. So, and what you know he does with Rossellini and her character also. So, but check it out, David Lynch, Blue Velvet, 1986. And if you could do me a favor and smash that like button, that'd be great. Really helps the channel. And I'll see you next time.